Coming up on this episode of We're No Damn Experts, we're getting the story about Cassiopeia Books, Great Falls' own independent bookstore. From all the Montana authors to the newly formed Montana Bookstore Trail.
Best damn podcast, the best damn town. You want to get up, get ready to get down. With its big wide sky and the wild river Thames, if you want to go, we can take you there to Great Falls, Montana.
Welcome to the greatest damn town in Montana, Great Falls. I'm Rebecca Ingham.
I'm Shannon Newth.
And we're No Damn Experts. Today in the studio, first let me say, I have been gone forever, and it felt great to be on vacation.
Good. So, as it should. That's
so there's that. Let's start there. So if it's a little wonky today, that's why.
Yeah.
But in the studio, to keep us on our toes, is first-time guest, amazing business owner.
Yes.
Someone I've gone to it with some weird requests, and she's just said, let's make this happen.
Yes.
Here you go.
She's a great partner.
Mille with Cassiopeia Books is with us in studio today to talk everything books.
Yes.
Mille, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, Mille, before we get into your kind of day job, let's talk about you. Are you originally from Great Falls? Because I know you didn't start Cassiopeia Books, but like perfect fit for you. So are you from Great Falls?
No, I'm originally from, I'd been living in New York. I'd been working as a lawyer, a public defender.
Oh, man.
Wow. I didn't know that about your past.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I had really good friends from the Peace Corps who live here in Montana. And I would come in Great Falls, and I would come and visit them for a week, pretty much every year, sometimes in the winter, sometimes in the summer. We'd go hiking and camping and catch up. But my friend Karen told me about this wonderful bookstore and used bookstore. And so when I came to visit, I would always stop there and fill up on, used books to take back to Brooklyn. Not that we didn't have bookstores in Brooklyn, but it was fun. And it was a great little store. And so I guess it was 2019, right after Christmas, and we were talking, and she said, that bookstore you love is for sale. And we both just started to laugh. Like I no retail experience, no business experience at all. Like, oh yeah, I could own a bookstore. And all of a sudden I just sort of thought,
I could own a bookstore.
I'm in my 60s. I'm, either they're going to be taking me out of my office in a box, or I could start a new adventure.
Yeah.
And so, I looked at the financials and I could make it work. And I came out to, Andrew and I started, he was the former owner, and we started corresponding via email. And I came out and we, had a handshake on the deal the last weekend in February of 2020.
Oh, my.
So I'm watching the stock market collapse,
Yeah.
saying, wow, my purchase of this is kind of based on my sale of my apartment back in New York. I wonder if this is going to affect it, right? So I go back, I tell my boss, I'll be leaving. And with my job, usually you give a month or two notice. So I give him 2 months notice. And then the next weekend, we were all evacuated from the office.
Oh, my gosh.
And I couldn't sell the apartment because New York City was shut down. And so I'm sort of like emailing Andrew saying, I really want to come. I really want to do this. I'm going to do this. I just
can't get out. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was great. And he was sort of, everybody was stuck. And so he was sort of like, I made it out here in the end of July of 2020. I had no furniture because the real estate people are like, we need to keep the apartment full of furniture if you want to get the best sale price. And I'm like, okay.
Wow. Well, it makes moving easier. Yeah.
Right. So I came out with I came out with my cats and my friends. I was living in they have 2 houses, and so I'm living in one of them, and they left me a little bit of furniture, and then I went back,
That's
in the
convenient.
fall.
They had an extra house for you.
Yeah, right. It was perfect. And so, I eventually got fully moved out here by the end of 2020, but I started working in the bookstore in August of 2020.
Wow.
And Andrew stayed for a month and kind of trained me, and then he left in September. It was sort of like, good luck.
Wow.
That is quite the transition, because
is.
knowing you, like, it's the perfect fit,
Oh,
for
cool.
us. Like, we're like, Millie's
Yeah.
just so good at this book
That's
thing.
her thing.
And so I would have never guessed that you had this completely different life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess
I mean, that's vastly different
Yeah.
than running a bookstore.
A lawyer in New York City to running an independent bookstore
in Great Falls,
downtown
Montana.
Great Falls. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and to give a plug to the Great Falls Development Authority,
Yeah.
they are wonderful. And, if anybody's coming here thinking about starting a small business in Great Falls, they are so helpful. They give all sorts
good.
of free training. You can get free one-on-one advice. I sort of heard about them and I thought, well, I'm just going to go and get a couple of pamphlets. And no, people sat down and talked to me for like an hour and a half. And we're really good about, this is what you need to think about in terms of the purchase and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I can't recommend them enough.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So other than being a lawyer, public defender in New York, what else has Millie done in her life that just makes more stories for us to learn about?
So after college, I went into the Peace Corps and I was stationed in Morocco. And
wow.
I taught English as a second language in high school. But, it was more to sort of, I think, meet people and sort of, get to know people in other countries and help build U.S. relations with other countries. And then I came back and I worked as a federal employee in the food stamp program. So I didn't actually give out food stamps, but I was monitoring programs in the 5. It was like New England and New York states, and we would sort of make sure they were following all the regulations. And then went to law school and then moved to New York and became a public defender.
Oh, wow.
How many years were you a public defender?
28.
Oh, my goodness.
That's a long time.
That is a long time.
Yeah, it was
God, the things you must
Yeah,
have seen.
that's
that's a whole different podcast.
That's a
You
whole
need to-
other story.
And maybe you should write a book on it.
Perfect fit.
Right.
Yeah.
I think most of it I've blanked out.
Yeah.
Sort of like,
Oh,
Fair.
that's probably
Fair
fine.
enough. Yeah.
Have you ever considered writing a book now that you own a bookstore and you get to meet some of these authors? And
it has actually reinforced my belief that I should not write a book. It's just, I meet really good authors and my whole thing is I have loved being an audience for books or for concerts or for theater. And I've never really wanted to go into those. I like to consume the end product of other people's hard labor.
yeah.
Well, you're a great promoter and supporter of all of those things.
Oh, cool.
Tell me about because obviously, I would assume that you love books and you love to read.
Yeah.
If you're part of the the industry that you're in, tell me about where did that love for reading and your passion for books start?
Oh, from my mom.
Okay.
She was an avid reader, and I remember. She was just always reading to us. We always had books. And I remember getting my first library card. It was such an event,
Yeah.
I think it was the Pittsburgh Carnegie Library System and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And you had to be able to write your name and recite a poem.
Oh,
the
so-
standards were higher then to get a library card. My goodness.
So I remember going in, I signed my name, I recited my poem, and I remember getting my first library card. I was still way too little to go by myself, but we would, the whole family, we would go every week. It was a couple blocks, and we'd walk down on Saturdays, and it was just
I remember my mom used to take us to the library when I was little, and just walking in, the smell of the library,
Yes.
the books and the different
love that.
programming and all the different colors and just being little enough where you couldn't
And the
read
tall,
yet.
big shelves. Yeah.
And then there was just all these different things happening at the library all the time, and
Yeah.
it's just a great memory.
yeah.
It was near a pizza place too, where,
Well, that helps.
where I grew up.
Get your pizza and your books. Yeah.
But-
Hopefully the books first so you don't get the grease all over
Yeah.
the pages.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
So it's fun getting to transport yourself into other worlds.
Yeah.
But
Do you have a favorite genre or type of book that is kind of your go-to?
I was a big mystery and science fiction fan. I didn't do a lot of nonfiction reading.
Oh.
But, lately I've really expanded. I got to read for part of the Reading the West awards, and that's sort of Western states and Western authors. But it's a cool contest because they send the long lists of books that have been submitted to booksellers. And so then we read them all, and it was like, gosh, it was
my
like
goodness.
25 books. Yeah.
That sounds like a lot of homework.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you read the books and then you pick your top 5. And then
Oh.
they collate the top 5 of everybody's top 5. And then readers get to vote on what they like best. So this year I did, I got selected for nonfiction. I did a really deep dive in nonfiction. And so it's really kind of sparked me to start reading more nonfiction than I ever had in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you a fast reader?
Yes. I try not to sacrifice comprehension for speed. But yeah, I mean, it's one of the, if I want to sort of keep up
Yeah.
with what's being offered, I kind of have to.
I would think just based on your work life history.
Oh, yeah,
Reading
that's true.
fast and trying to pick out the things that are most important would be essential.
Yeah.
So, were you a fan of, let's say, local writers and artists before you kind of got the bookstore?
In Montana?
Yeah.
No.
Were you surprised by how many are here?
I was stunned, especially in Great Falls.
So Montana authors, not just Montana, but Great Falls authors.
Oh, yeah.
You've got your props.
Yeah.
Tell us about them.
So Great Falls has amazing authors in pretty much every genre and over time. So I pulled one of my favorites, Winter Wheat by Mildred Walker, who was a Great Falls resident and wrote books in the 40s and 50s and probably later. And they are stunning. I'm holding a copy of Winter Wheat, which I think is one of the best coming-of-age novels I've ever read about a girl raised on a farm out on the prairie and just sort of, she's transitioning into adulthood and, just amazing about sort of the difficulties of life on a farm and the concerns, especially back in the 40s. And Mildred Walker wrote it right as World War II was starting.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
And so everybody's concerned about the war and they're concerned about what would happen. And the war was raging in Europe and it was the U.S. going to get involved?
Yeah.
And it's really just brilliant, especially about one of the big themes is when you're transitioning from a child and seeing your parents as adults.
Yeah.
And it's brilliant.
Is it based, like the story, is it obviously her story, but is it based in this area?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think
Okay.
she doesn't specifically name the towns. I think she gives them
Okay.
other towns, but it's clearly taking place in the farmland outside of Great Falls,
Wow.
in my opinion.
Oh.
So that's brilliant. And then we have two current. So that's a fiction, and we currently have Jamie Ford and Rachel
Yes.
Bateman who live in Great Falls, and both of them have great books out right now.
Yeah.
Jamie Ford has The Many Daughters of Afong Moy, which just came out in paperback this spring.
Oh,
And
nice.
It's a great book, just sort of following the first female documented Chinese immigrant in the United States and sort of imagining what her descendants would be or how they would live in the United States. And it goes back and forth in time. It's a little bit sci-fi, and it talks about epigenetic trauma and what can possibly cure it. So that's a great one.
And folks, if you really want to get into the Jamie Ford world, episode 100 of We're No Damn Experts is with Jamie Ford.
Oh,
And
excellent.
it was a great
It was so much
conversation.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't expect him to be as funny as he was.
Oh man, he's great.
Yeah,
and
he's a character.
He's such a great friend of the bookstore.
Yeah.
I sent him an email and I'm like, Jamie, I've got some books. Could you come by and sign them? And he does.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like
I mean,
wonderful.
busy man too. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
neat.
and that was what was so cool. Like, do we have to go through your publicist to get you on the podcast? He's like, no, I'm just coming in. I'm like, oh, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just reached out. Yep. Messaged him.
So, but I don't know this other.
Oh, so Rachel Bateman.
It's a really
writes-
pretty cover, which I
Yeah,
have to say I love a pretty book cover. So
Yeah.
I'm attracted to that already.
It's her latest. It's called Make the Fireflies Dance. And it's sort of, she does young people novels. This one's kind of a rom-com, and it's great. And she, I'm just trying to remember her other books. No, she's got Someone Else's Summer that she wrote, and is it The 99 Days of Lacey? But she's written, she's published, and her books are great. And she's another person living in Great Falls. It's wonderful to have, contemporary, nationally published authors.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Living here.
Yeah.
And then historically, there's a book, Montana, High, Wide, and Handsome, which was written by Joseph Kinsey Howard.
I like
who
the name.
Was another Great Falls resident. And he just sort of wrote this sort of history, discussing people and the landscapes, and it's a great book. And when people come in and say, I want a book about Montana, I'm like, well, here you go.
Here's
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. So he was, as he says on the back, it was like he was the news editor for the Great Falls Leader. And,
That's been a while
you
then.
know,
Yeah.
Folks, our current newspaper is the Tribune.
right. But William Kittredge wrote the introduction. So, and A.B. Guthrie, another famous Montana author, wrote the preface. So,
Oh, wow.
he was really widely respected. Unfortunately, he died young. I think he was just in his 40s when he passed away. Yeah,
wow.
That's too bad.
back in the days of heart attacks. And then we have two great travel guides written by Great Falls authors. So the first one is a hiking guide called Discover the Rocky Mountain Front by Tom Katinsky, and it's the go-to hiking book in Great Falls.
He is absolutely amazing. It's just crazy to me the amount of outdoor recreation that man has done. And I have a dream that he's going to be on our podcast.
I've tried. Tom, if you're listening, check your emails, please.
Yeah. And his wife,
Katie.
Katie leads
they're
Girls in
amazing.
Glacier, or did, and
Yeah.
they're just an amazing power hiking team.
Yeah.
Their life just has to be amazing.
Yeah.
Right?
Every day. Like,
It's
hey,
just a big adventure.
do you guys want to go for a hike today? And they're like, yeah,
We know every inch of the Rocky Mountain Front.
let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're just out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we come to the Guide to Montana State Parks
Oh, nice.
by Erin Madison and Kristen
Yeah.
Inbody, who
From former,
Great
currently
Falls
the
Tribune.
Great Falls Tribune. They're
Yeah.
formerly of the Great Falls Tribune.
Right,
Yeah.
right, yeah. And so they wrote a really fun kind of guide, because I sort of looked at it and I thought, oh, this is going to give you the specifics, but it's kind of fun in that it talks about, like, they interview people who are there, sort of like, let me see if I can find the one for sluice boxes.
Oh,
And it was just
yeah.
like, it was really fun. Oh, we come here when it's hot, and we come here to cool off. And yeah, so they talk, it's a beautiful place to cool off next to the water, playing near the rocks. And, on Sundays we come and we happen to meet up with friends, but people from all over the country come. There's also a bit where you can get choke cherries. So you can go out and harvest those. But
Fun.
really interesting, sort of covering the gamut of all the different kinds of authors that we have right here in Great Falls, both historically and currently.
Yeah.
Well, and that's not to talk about the people who are writing probably less big novels.
Oh, yeah.
Our local historians that do a lot of writing.
yes.
Some self-publishing. There was a book that just came out. It was like a compilation of various short stories and poems, and Eric Heidel is in that book.
Fun.
Oh,
yeah.
So there's just a wild world of not just history, but nonfiction and fiction and things that all occur here that you can get at this great little independent bookstore.
Yes.
Yeah, and Ken Robeson, he's one of
Yep.
the best
Incredible.
amazing
Yeah.
historians in Montana. He's based, I think, both in Great Falls and Fort Benton.
Okay.
And I'm just trying to,
Phil
Roberta Bordy.
Scriver, I don't know if everyone
Yes.
knows. Phil hangs out with us on Thursday afternoons. He's an amazing volunteer.
Yes. He's great.
He's a Lewis and Clark aficionado. He writes books.
Yeah.
Yeah, he brought one in the other day
Yeah,
that
he's
he was
working-
going over the final edits or something of his
to
book.
get it
Yeah.
republished. And I
Uh-huh.
was like, oh yeah, I forget.
I forgot
like,
you also do that.
Yeah. No, tons of self-published authors in Great
Mm-hmm.
Falls. Really great.
And then I would say the one author that's not necessarily from here, but
Mm-hmm.
his books are probably the most well known about our area, Ivan Doig.
Oh,
yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of like, well, do I bring an Ivan Doig book? 'Cause he's really from DePoyer, but I know
Right.
like The 11th Man is about Great Falls, and his books are just stunning.
People fall in love with our area just because they've read Ivan Doig books.
Yeah.
I've been chatting with an author, Liz, and I believe it's Gordon, the last name. She lives in Germany now, but she wrote a fiction novel, and I think she's the one I told you about a few months ago. And she lives in Germany now, but she had been stationed here in Great Falls. They want to move back. They want to come back to Great Falls, but she wrote a book. She's written a couple, but her most recent, Meet Me in Montana, is about the sluice boxes area, the Missouri River. She incorporates that into a lot of her books. So the life and culture here has affected people who don't live here anymore, but still have dreams of their time here.
Yeah, and we've had her book in the bookstore too. I think it might currently be out. That's a good reminder.
Yeah.
I need to reorder.
The other thing that I think is really unique is just the fact that we have still an independent
Yeah.
bookstore that has both new and used books. Nothing against Barnes and Noble.
No.
They employ great people here, but just that local feel. We had a media group here, all international, about 5 people. And while we were having dinner, they said, you haven't, because we were driving to the Sip and Dip. And at the time, you had to drive by Cassiopeia Books. And they said, you have an independent bookstore. And I said, yeah, we do. And I said, at the time, Andrew still owned it. So it's a young guy that owns it. And it's just this kind of unique feature. And then he brings in local authors. And they're like, oh, man, I wish I would have known that. I would have asked for my itinerary to include half a day at the end
Oh
of
my
the
goodness.
bookstore.
Half a day. That's awesome.
And I was like, well, we can make that happen, and then you can catch up with them.
Yeah.
Like, I can make sure that happens and get you caught up. And she's like, no, I'm just going to come back. She was from Germany, and she just fell in love with the idea that we still had an independent bookstore.
Yeah. I love it. Just the atmosphere.
And I love the new space over the old.
Yeah, no, it's a great space.
And that, as we were talking, that reminded me, can you tell the story of the name and the meaning of Cassiopeia Books?
Yeah, so
Good.
So I always thought it was named after the constellation Cassiopeia, and the constellation. The other name is Queen of the Northern Sky. So I thought that was
That
romantic.
makes sense.
Yeah,
Sure.
But Andrew told me, and I haven't looked it up. But it's the Latin name for Rocky Mountain heather. Cassiopeia is part of the name, and so that's what he was a botanist, and that's what he named it for.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, he used the constellation
As
on the
part of-
signs and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
But that
But
was
it has
his
a kind of a
original
double
inspiration. Yeah.
meaning of that. Okay. So let's talk about the kind of the layout and the types of things you have in the store, because it's pretty easy when you walk in, like, oh, I want a Montana book or I want poetry. So tell me a little bit about the layout and kind of why you picked what you picked in there.
Sure. So, God bless Andrew. He did the move because the move happened in the middle
Yeah.
of the pandemic.
I can't imagine moving a bookstore.
I get overwhelmed just trying to
I have
reorganize
to
my
think,
bookshelf.
though, it's
Yeah.
pretty easy to pack, though.
It does. Yeah. Fair.
Everything goes in a box.
Yeah, yep. And so, So he set it up. I think it's sort of based on the model of the old store, where when you first walk in, you hit the Montana section. So on the right side, we have fiction by Montana authors, and we have a separate section for memoirs and poetry by Montana authors. And on the left, then we have Montana history. And next to it, we have a bookcase that has Charlie Russell books and Lewis and Clark books. And then we have a Native American Studies bookcase.
Oh.
And then just sort of a general Western bookcase. And so the way the store is set up is that sort of like 3, you can call them rooms, but there aren't really walls between them, but you're sort of areas. So that's the first area. And then you go into the second area, and it's all general fiction on the right and different nonfiction areas on the left. So we'll have a bookcase for travel, we'll have a bookcase for travel writing, and a bookcase for nature writing, and then a bookcase for science and history and biography, and then little shelves for literary criticism and sort of different authors. So Andrew was a huge Joyce and Kafka fan. So if anyone out there is a Joyce or Kafka fan, I have excellent shelves full of discussions of Joyce and Kafka. And, then other little shelves for like psychology and economics and that kind of stuff. And then in the next room, we have the origins of the store, which was called the Paperback Jungle. And that was started as a paperback exchange. So you would bring in a paperback and you'd get a credit towards the purchase of a new paperback. And then on the other side,
my mother-in-law loves that feature. She always brings, she's a reader, and she brings her old or already read books with her, and she's like, I gotta go to Cassiopeia when I'm in town. She's in town right now, so I need to check and see if she's made it down there yet, but she loves doing that at Cassiopeia.
It's really fun. And then we've got science fiction and then a kids section. So I think probably my big contribution is just expanding the kids section, because I remember that's how I learned to love reading. And it's funny nowadays to sort of keep up. I've gone back to reading middle grade books, sort of like early chapter books, and moving on. And it's funny because it's like I read these books and they're so great. And then I was like, this is why I learned to love reading.
Yeah.
These books are so much fun. Even as an adult, I'm like, oh, this is a great book. I love this book. But I think the really important feature of the store is it is a community bookstore in the sense that we have the exchange program, and I've broadened it not just from the paperbacks, but also if you bring us in other used books, nonfiction, if it's in one of the genres that we sell, and we've got room at the time and not too many other copies of it, we'll take it back, and then you get $1 credit off of any used book in the store. And so
nice.
And it makes it gives it a real community feel. Like, what does Great Falls like to read? What is Great Falls interested in? And you get like really bizarre stuff every once in a while. And I'm sort of trying to think, but but then it's really funny because then somebody will come in and say, wow, I've been looking for this for years.
You're like, well, okay, Speaking of the community aspect too, you also have a few not book items that you sell in the store that are things made here in Great Falls, like the Little Fern Candle Company. I know you have her candles in there. Yeah,
and we carry some of Jessie Bidlack's soap. I'm trying to Sweet Prairie Farm. So we've got some of her soap, and I'd like to expand that. And part of my project, the way I found out about Little Fern and Jessie was I went to the farmer's market. So go to the farmer's market and look for artisans who maybe in the fall would want a place to sell stuff.
Now, if someone's thinking it's a bookstore, so you've got coffee and chairs, what's the rules on that?
Okay, so
BYOC,
right? Bring your own coffee. There are amazing coffee shops in a very short walking distance, and everybody's like, "Oh, you should have coffee here." I'm like, "No, you can get really good coffee."
You don't want the crap I'm gonna make,
right? And so I look at that, and everybody's like, "Oh, it's such a great business model," and I'm like, I will support Great Falls coffee stores till the end of time. And also just to keep the mess out. And but in terms of liquids, just as long as it's got a lid, you can bring it in. So
we had talked either on the podcast or in the office. I can't remember which. But we loved the blind date.
Yes, I was just I have yet to take advantage of that, but I love this concept. Every time I walk in, I'm like, oh, that's such a cute little idea. Yeah. Tell us about that.
So we have two sort of things like that. We've got blind date with a book, which none of these are my ideas. I just saw them from other people. But blind date with a book is great. We sort of take a book, we wrap it up, and then we just sort of give you the first line, and we tell you what genres it's in.
Ooh, you get like a clue.
Yeah,
Okay.
so you get a clue to sort of, it'll be fiction, and
if you want to show up for the blind date or not,
right,
basically.
Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of fun, and I know people get them for other people as part of a present, kind of throw it in there.
Yeah.
So that's really fun. And then the other thing we do are grab bags, dollar grab bags.
Oh.
So you get some brown paper lunch bags, and I'll tell you the author and what genre they're in, and then for $1, like gamble. Yeah.
Ooh,
Take a
that's
chance.
fun. I like that idea.
Yeah. Plus they're, and they're older paperbacks. There's 3 in a bag, but you could take it up to the lake and not worry. I mean, if it falls in the lake, it's like not the end of the world.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Well, and I think that's a good way to find new things to read. Because
Yeah.
I'm one of those readers that I will fall in love with an author and then read absolutely everything they make. And then when I'm done,
You're like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
well, what else is there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and Millie, I imagine if someone walks in, you're able to give them a recommendation as well. If someone like Rebecca walks in and is like, okay, I've read all of this author, I loved them, what do I do next?
Yeah.
You can help guide people.
Yeah, and it's hard. Sometimes, I mean, so what I've done with Sandy Rice, who helps me out, and she worked in the book industry for years, and she lives in Great Falls. And so we sort of set up shelves of, Sandy's recommendations. And Sandy is like, I can sell these books to anybody in multiple copies. And her favorite is the Storied Lives of A.J. Fikry, which she's like, it's a great book. It's really fun. And she's sort of like, if she's covering the store for me and she hasn't sold 3 copies in that day, she considers it a failure.
Oh my gosh. That's impressive.
Yeah. And then I put books I've enjoyed. So sort of if you tell me what genre you like, I can try to find a book. And I'm always so surprised when people come back and say, wow, that was a great recommendation, And sometimes they come back and they say, yeah, it wasn't really my style, but it's like, okay, so that gives me more information to move on. Yeah. I think somebody wrote a book about being a bookseller, and it was sort of like, I think the title was something like, tell me everything you've ever known and loved in 90 seconds and I'll find the book. And I'm like, I'm not there yet.
well, it's
The
such
goals.
a tall order.
It is.
When you walk in, you're like, there's so much variety. Like you would have to have read everything on planet Earth.
Yeah.
And it's
That's why
just
you have
not
to be a fast
possible.
reader.
That's why we're not experts.
That's why we're not experts on this. Yeah. You also host, as we've talked about, varying events, from author events to just other things. So can you tell us more about the events that are happening at your store?
Yeah. So this summer, I've got some self-published people coming in. And then in the fall, I've got more Montana nationally published authors coming in. Endor Thoreau has got a new book coming out, and Ken Robeson, his book's being published early, so I think we've got a date for him. I don't have my calendar with me, but if you go onto our website, you can find it.
And we always have your stuff listed.
Oh, yeah.
As soon
That's
as
true.
you
I send
tell
you guys-
us when things are happening.
Yeah.
So if you need people, you can always
Find
get in
that.
touch with us or
Yeah.
Cassiopeia's Facebook page also.
Yes.
Yeah. So, we're trying to keep up the author events, and we've had a couple of music events. I like to have those. So if you're a musician and you want to come in and play, just ask, because it's pretty easy. I mean, we don't charge a fee, but we'll let you pass the hat. And so those are really fun. And we've had a couple of, we have a poetry group that meets once a month, although they're sort of rethinking it, just because there haven't been that many people, but it's also summer. But it's a great group if you write your own poetry or prose and you want to come and read it to a group that's going to be very supportive. I mean, there are a lot of authors here in Great Falls, and writing groups are great, but it's also really good to sort of get out there and read your own work to other people, because I think you can hear what's good, what's not so good when you're actually reading it out loud to others.
Yeah. There is some of that benefit just from a proofreading standpoint.
Yeah.
I will read things out loud and go, that
yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
even sound like
Yeah.
words that would go into a sentence together.
Yeah, flow is critical.
Do you have book clubs?
We do. We have one book club. It meets the third Wednesday of every
Oh.
month, although we're sort of having, scheduling issues. The books that I wanted to read the Lost Journals of Sacagawea.
I would
yeah.
like to read that one.
Yeah, well, I can't get a copy for love or money. I'm like, it's been on back order since
Yeah.
the end of May, and so it's sort of like so I'm sort of rethinking. And then I've got another good one, Maggie Anderson's memoir, Between Rock and a Hard Place, and I was thinking, well, we could read that next month. And now, like, the books aren't arriving, so I'm like, oh no,
We're not reading that.
yeah, but we're
Just
trying to
yet.
focus on Montana authors, so both living and dead, and it was great. It was sort of like we'd been reading Winterweed, and then we'd read some James Welch, and I think we'd read a couple other people, and then we were also part of the High Plains Book Award long list readers, so they are trying to expand and send out book packets to different towns, and so everybody we ended up getting first book, and so they could be self-published, they could be nationally published, and you get a little bag and it's got 4 books, and you read the books and then you rate them. But anyway, when we were doing that last year, we got Mara Panich from Fact and Fiction, the bookseller in Missoula, and she had written a book of poetry, and the person who read it liked it so much that wanted to do it as the book for the month, and Mara actually came in and spoke at the store with us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we can get, but we're focused basically on Montana authors and trying to focus on that and have that specific book club. So if anybody wants to join us, you're more than welcome, and we'll. As soon as I get books in stock, I'll put the book on the website.
Perfect.
And then you can. The other fun thing that the independent booksellers have tackled is really kind of a big endeavor, which is awesome, is the bookstore trail.
Yeah, this is
Tell us what the deal is there.
Yeah, so I'm holding a passport, and it's got
fun.
Yeah, it's got
I like passports.
yeah, it's got a map in the front identifying all of the participating bookstores. And this year,
Cool.
It was the brainchild of Rachel from Reading Leaves bookstore in Townsend. She just in February sent everybody an email saying, "What do you guys think about this?" And everybody's like, "This would be great."
Yeah.
And she created a nonprofit, and she got some sponsors, and so the passports are free. And you can go from store to store. You can sort of follow the map and go from store to store. And when you stop in each store, you'll get a stamp on your passport. But each
Fun.
page tells you a little bit about the bookstores that are participating. And
I see you have your stamp
I
for
did.
Cassiopeia.
I brought a
Perfect.
stamped one. And it's just really fun because I've already had a lot of people saying, "Wow, I didn't know there was a bookstore there. Or I thought there was only one bookstore in town, and it turns out there are more." But it really is a bookseller work because Rachel did a lot of work on it. Mark Boudin from Elk River Books did the graphics, and it's just really fun. And this year it's pretty much the members of the American Bookseller Association, but we're trying to get all of the smaller stores too that are in Montana, because there are a lot of really great bookstores in little corners of other stores like Latigo and Lace in Augusta. Like you go there and you think it's artwork, and
They do have a nice book section.
but they've got a fabulous book section, so they joined. And I know I can't remember the name, but like the grocery store up in East Glacier, just as you're about that little great place that's got, fabulous baked goods. It's always great to stock up on before you hit the trail. But they've got a great bookstore. So sort of trying to find all of those. But it's really a fun idea, and it's people are really interested in it.
Do you get like a free book if you stamp your whole passport?
If you stamp your whole passport, you get entered into a a contest
Oh,
for
nice.
a raffle basket full of
Oh,
books.
yeah.
Ooh.
But I kind of think so. There's Page Turners in Fairview, which is in eastern Montana, and I
Yeah.
kind of think that's the hill everybody's going to die on. But they're really going to. If you get
If
out
you
to
can
Fairview,
make it to
the odds
Fairview, you
there
can do
are
all
really
of
in your
it.
favor.
The deal is, I am from Eastern Montana.
Yeah.
And that is one of the communities. Like, you're not just going to pass through there.
You have to
That
be
is a
going there.
destination location.
Okay.
And, it's right on the border with North Dakota.
Yeah.
So,
Well, diehard book fans then.
well,
Can
and
make it to
I think what's
Fairview.
really unique about this idea is you get to meet then the local shop owners,
Yeah.
which each one of them have to have just this unique, interesting
Yeah.
background
Like Millie.
and
Yes.
be so well read. The things that they've read, the places they've gone just in their imagination,
Yeah.
they've got to just be fascinating to talk to,
Yes.
like Millie.
And they also they had us include a fun fact about our
Oh, yeah.
store, right?
What's
so
your fun fact?
my fun fact is I have a wonderful collection of typewriters and a 40-year-old 9-foot-tall cactus instead of a bookstore cat.
How has that just come up, Millie? So is your collection of typewriters on display in the store? I have
Yes.
never even noticed them.
Yes, the typewriters are all over the place.
Yeah,
and
they're cool.
Yeah, most of them actually still work. We just can't get ribbons for them. So I haven't done a deep dive to find ribbons. but-
How many do you have? Because I know I've seen them in the store, but I probably have looked over a lot.
3, 4. I think I've got 9 altogether.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Maybe 6 or 7 on display.
So we were at an auction. Gosh, was it just this year? Maybe it was last year. It doesn't matter. But they had an old typewriter in the auction.
Oh wow.
And it was the name, and I'm blanking on the name, but it's when you think of old typewriters, it's that brand. of-
Royal maybe?
No.
Royal Smith Corona.
It's like how every movie has this brand. Anyway, so I start bidding on it, and my husband goes, "What are you doing?" And I'm like,
It's cool.
I'm gonna get that typewriter. Like, it's a cool piece of
Yeah.
decor, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
And so they just I kept going, and I kept bidding, and Robert's freaking out. He's like, "You're at $85 now for this
Why are we spending
typewriter,"
money
and
on
I'm
this
like,
typewriter?
"I'm gonna get it." And he's like, "You need to stop." It went past 150.
Oh wow.
Gosh.
And so I'm like, I think maybe I'm not that committed to this.
Yeah.
So like I'd have gone up to 100,
Yeah.
but 150.
Robert's just appalled that.
Yeah. He's so scared because he's like, what is happening?
I could imagine him though if you would have gotten it, just sitting at the house like
Right.
typing on it. So it'd be a toy for him. Yeah.
Well, I feel so old too when little kids come in and it's like, "What's that?" And it's sort of like, "How does it work?" And it's like, "Oh man."
Get the rotary telephone.
Yeah.
set
Right,
right
next
next
to
to it.
Right.
Yeah. That's I should start collecting rotary phones.
Yeah.
Somebody came in once with an old, it was a tragedy, but I just had no space for it. It was an old ledger typewriter, and the typewriter arm was like a yard because
Oh
of
my
that long
gosh.
paper, and you could just go all the way down and do all of the bookkeeping
Wow.
entries. Yeah, it was really cool, and and he was willing to donate it, but it was just the arm was sort of like,
You're like, where
where
do I put
this?
this?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah, it was that, but yeah, they're very cool. And the cactus,
How old is it?
it's 40 years old. A woman's
I can barely keep a
grandmother.
plant alive for like a week.
Yeah,
Hey,
Including-
you're doing great with the ones here at the office.
They don't look great, but I kept them alive. Yeah.
yeah. Well, this one, her grandmother cut it from another cactus
Oh,
and
yeah.
started it, and it got to be 9 feet tall,
Oh,
and
my
she couldn't
gosh.
fit it in her home anymore, and sort of like came in and saw how high our ceiling was at Cassiopeia Books, and she's like,
Here, you want it?
Such a home for misfit things.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Like, you were telling us about the bird.
Yeah.
Now you've got this cat. Like, I can't wait to see what happens next. Like somebody
Right,
just
what
shove like,
random things gonna be in
I
there.
don't have room for this anymore.
Yeah.
"Can you give it?"
Will
I'll
you give it a home?
Look through our house and be like, yeah, we want this, Millie?
Oh my gosh. But it was so funny when they brought it in because it's a cactus, it's spiny, and so they had wrapped it up. It looked like a dead body. They're bringing it through the back. It was like it had wrapped at the top and then wrapped at the bottom, and I was sort of like, okay.
Oh my gosh.
But we should have repotted it when it was wrapped because that's my big. I'm sort of like, who do I find to help me do this?
Has it still grown in height?
Yep, it's still growing. It's still getting.
How tall are your ceilings?
No.
They're tall.
Pretty tall.
They're pretty tall. I think it's got another 6 feet.
Okay.
It could go. Yeah.
So it should be fine for a few years.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see where it ends up after it can't fit in
You
your
should
place
just have
anymore.
like a time-lapse tracker on the cactus in there. Yeah. Mark it like a little kid growing on the wall.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
So where can people pick up the passports other than Cassiopeia Books?
Any of the bookstores.
Okay.
Did I bring you guys some? I probably forgot.
Not yet.
No.
No.
Oh, sorry. I will bring you some tomorrow.
Perfect.
I'll remember to take them home
Awesome.
tonight.
Yeah.
So you can give them out to people who start here, and they can start their trail.
Do they have to do it within like a year or a certain length of time? Or
I mean, I think the contest we sort of said was this summer, which is probably too short of a time period, especially with Fairview. But it's like
had to include Fairview.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
And we'll sort of, it's the first year and we're sort of like doing it, making mistakes and working things out as we go. But this year, I think if you go to the website, I think it's the end of September.
Okay.
As I've already mentioned, but I want it documented in a public format. My dream is that this passport has specific books that you have to get
Like that you purchase
at each bookstore that's about that area.
Ooh. Yeah, I like that.
So a little bit of a challenge, but then it creates kind of that need. And then you can always add books or because like I'm familiar with the beer passport. And those folks who have listened to our podcast for a number of years know this girl likes her beer. But in that, you get the brewery, and you're always going back and listing the beers that you've tried there.
Gotcha.
And so I think there's a fun element for that. But I also think there's just some great benefit to going to Fairview and finding a book about that area in an independent bookstore with someone who's passionate about what it is.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. That's a great idea.
And then it's also that opportunity that whoever picks up those passports kind of gets an idea of what books are available about all of these areas of Montana.
Yeah.
That's my dream.
You can get bonus points maybe if you purchase the books from there.
But with each of them, we put in the fun fact, we could put in, the representative book. It wouldn't be hard for next year.
Yeah, that would be fun. And then you would know, you have a mission.
Right.
That's what I'm going to do. Well, Millie, it's been a delight talking about your history, your knowledge. I just love it when we have smart people on our podcast.
Yes, which is all the time, right? Talking to us. So, yeah.
Yeah, when it's just us, it gets a little dicey.
Millie, where can people find you and when?
Sure. We're at 606 Central Avenue in Great Falls, Montana. And our store hours are 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. Tuesday through Friday. And then we're open on Saturdays from 10 to 4.
Okay.
Look at that. So, folks, if you want that experience of an independent bookstore and the access to someone who's read things and knows stuff, don't come here.
To us. Yeah. We can give you a passport, but that's about it. Yeah.
Go to Cassiopeia Books. Really a unique experience in downtown Great Falls, and one you probably would have never known about. And they are featured in our Montana's Basecamp magazine. So if you have that, it is one of the things that we say, go to their store, get some books about this area, because you'll fall deeper in love with our community.
And we talked about it in our shopping, one of our
that's
two-part
true.
shopping episodes as
We
well.
talked a lot about shopping.
Yeah. And we mentioned your store. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so maybe that's when we talked about the blind date thing.
I think we did, because I was like, we've talked about this before. I think it was on the shopping podcast.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, folks. You're just going to have to deal with the fact that we don't remember what we talked about.
we're just giving them all the more reason to try it. Yeah.
So
Definitely.
thanks, Millie, for being here.
Yeah.
And we appreciate you folks for listening. And until we see your bright, smiling, happy, healthy face here in Great Falls, we hope you are creating amazing memories with your friends and family wherever you might be. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We're No Dam Experts is the recorded claims from Great Falls, Montana, covering what you need to know about this amazing damn town. Damn, that felt good.